All right, welcome to the second episode of Life Imitating Movies podcast, where we take stories from the week and we relate them to movies that have come before them that kind of relate to those movies. I'm one of your hosts, Brad. Sitting over there is my man Mitch. Say what's up, Mitch.
Hello.
There you go. So, in order to kick things off this week, I was watching a movie that had a scene in it that for me was, I remember seeing it in theaters, that when I saw it, it made me die laughing for like 20 minutes in the movie. So I hit you up and I asked you, do you have a movie or a scene in a movie where you saw it and it just hit you in your gut? It made you just laugh uncontrollably, like not just like a haha, but like a you couldn't stop laughing, like people looking at you, like what is wrong with this guy type of laugh.
So I did have an answer for this one, and maybe it's not quite that type of reaction, but it was still something that took me completely by surprise, that really still had me nonstop laughing. Maybe not, hurt in my gut kind of laugh, but and the movie moment I kind of picked out for that was the ending to This Is the End. And if
Okay.
you haven't seen that movie yet and you have interest in it, then don't listen for the next couple minutes. But because we're talking about the end of the movie here, but when I saw that for the first time in theaters, you know the ending kind of performance by the Backstreet Boys just caught me completely by surprise. Was not expecting it at all, and did not hate it at all. It didn't really get a constant gut laugh out of me, but it still just, I had this like smile on my face and just kept chuckling the entire time that the Backstreet Boys just showed up and just started doing a song and jam that everybody was dancing to. And it was a great moment to see. Totally unexpected. It was great.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the End is up there in terms of, I'd put it as a top five comedy for me. Uh, the scene where Franco and Danny McBride are arguing about the magazine. That to me is one of the funniest scenes ever made. But yeah, dude, as an unapologetic fan of the Backstreet Boys, saw them in concert last year,
Hmm.
by myself, mind you, because nobody would go with me. Um, but yeah, the ending was phenomenal where they came in. Yeah, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, they make funny movies, man. They have two movies in my top 10, which are This Is the End and Sausage Party. So I love them. But yeah. So the movie that made me think of this question was Fight Club, and Fight Club has a scene. First off, have you seen Fight Club?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of the scene you might say, and I think I know which one it is.
Okay, well let's see. Because the thing I'm thinking of was, so it's 1999. I'm in the theater. My friend, it's an empty theater, opening weekend of Fight Club, and it was pretty empty. The movie didn't do that well in theaters. And I'm sitting there, and there's a scene where Brad Pitt is riding around in a circle on a little girl's bicycle, while Edward Norton is just talking, and he's just riding around in a circle, and then he hits the wall and he flies off the bicycle. And I just remember in theaters, I was laughing for a good 20 minutes at that scene. And it's just something so dumb. It just it just was one of those things that just hit me in the exact right spot where I could not stop laughing for, I would say, a good 20 minutes. I ruined for anybody who may have been around me, because I would just think about it and I would just laugh again. It was that gut level laugh.
Because
And
the
then
scene I thought you were gonna say was when Edward Norton was beating himself up in his boss's office. I thought that was the scene
yeah,
you were gonna talk about, because that is actually pretty funny.
it's a great. I mean, it's one of my favorite. My friends did not like that movie, but it's one of my favorites. All right, so first up on the old story list was, I figure the biggest story of the past week is going to be Joe Biden's inauguration, making it official. He became the 46th president of the United States. So Um, just the website I went to was just whitehouse.gov because on that day it officially at 12 o'clock it officially switched over from Donald Trump website, page to Joe Biden as president. And so
And
first and foremost,
through the magic of post production, we'll now put a picture of the thumbnail from the website right now to kind of show you what it looks like switched over to this new administration. And now we go back to our regularly scheduled program.
ooh, that was magical, Mitch. um, so first and foremost, did you watch the inauguration?
I did. This isn't a politics show. We're here to talk movies and such, but I just wanted to say that I wanted to see the first ever not only female but of course African American and all the other firsts that Kamala Harris kind of shattered when she kind of took her oath and became the new vice president. So I did watch part of it, although I can't say I watched the what seemed like 50 to 100 different musical acts that came at different points throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I like being a San Francisco boy. I'm a fan of Kamala Harris. That's where she's from and stuff. And so I like Kamala Harris. I spent most of the day watching that stuff. It was yeah. Without getting too into politics, it felt like the end of a war. That's what it felt like that day. And so I watched the inauguration. I watched the musical acts. I watched everybody. The poet, that 22-year-old girl, the poet girl, she wrote a phenomenal piece of writing. I mean, as writer myself, I appreciate good writing, and that was pretty damn good. The musical acts, I thought Lady Gaga was phenomenal, man. Her performance as the Star Spangled Banner was great. J Lo, I'm indifferent to. I don't really care too much about J-Lo. Garth Brooks, I'm not a country guy, but apparently Garth Brooks was going around kissing everybody after it, which was pretty funny. But no, the musical performances that night, they had like this special, because they have like an inaugural ball that they go to at night, but because of COVID they can't right now, so they had like this whole thing at night with hosted by Tom Hanks. Did you catch that at all or no?
I knew it was going on. I didn't watch it, but I knew some of the people that were kind of be a part of the celebration and people that were going to sing, and Tom Hanks was kind of master of ceremonies, but I didn't actually watch all of it just because, whether or not you were tuned in for that or the inauguration, one kind of didn't go with the other. So it was like, look, you're either kind of tuning in for the inauguration or you're tuning in for all these different music acts that were coming up, because if you really wanted to see one or the other, you didn't really care as much about the other ones. So I didn't really watch the second half of the day with all that.
Right on. Well, you missed a hell of a fireworks display.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was pretty gnarly. That's one thing I miss, though. I mean, we live so close to DC, and I miss in like 2 months, March, April, when it starts to get semi nice. I'd go down to DC, just take the train down to DC, 20-30 minutes, you're down to DC, just walking around. So hopefully all this COVID stuff gets fixed soon, so we can go do some DC walking, because I it's something I enjoy doing every year, being so close. So to switch over, so in thinking of the movies that could go with an inauguration, I was looking up. I was trying to think, were there any movies that specifically take place during an inauguration? I couldn't think of any, and so I kind of just went with the most recent political movie that was like I really really enjoyed, which is Vice, talking about Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney movie where Christian Bale played Dick Cheney, and written and directed by Adam McKay, who won the Oscar for The Big Short. And so, it's tough to talk about that movie without getting too political, but, you start to see, you see how Dick Cheney wasn't the best for this country in that movie. Granted, it's a skewed movie because it's written by a guy who, didn't like Cheney and doesn't like his policies, but I like the fact that even in the movie at the end, he said, they blatantly say nothing in the movie it was exaggerated for the movie's sake. Nothing was like this all happened. Everything that is in this movie has been researched and it happened. And you start to see how people like that truly took over what our country became and is hopefully steering away from now, in my own personal opinion.
So, a lot of those types of movies, you'll see they say based on true events or based on real life events. That's because, movies are already always going to take some liberties. You're never going to see a 100% fact to translation on the big screen. So, movies just have to take some liberties to make things more exciting, to create a different story, to do all these different things where, yes, some real life events serve as inspiration, but obviously they want to be able to kind of do it a little bit differently instead of, oh, it's just, a textbook kind of put to screen. So that's understandable if they kind of, ran with it a couple different things or told different sides of certain stories. So, all movies kind of based on real life events do that to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, some take more liberties than other. That's why I like on the Joe Blow network they do a show called "What Really Happened to This Movie," and they delve into the movie telling of a story versus the real life story of what happened. It's an interesting show. You should check it out. That they did Amityville Horror stuff like that, just to show how the liberties some filmmakers will take. But that's where I appreciated Vice was it's based on a true story, but they even went a step further, I believe, at the end of the movie to say this movie was meticulously researched. This is what happened, and so that's because I think it's one of those things where if it's not true, you know that's Cheney could sue him. If
Sure.
if something was not actually factual, Cheney could come after the filmmakers. But if you make everything unscrutable, I think is the word, you can't go after him. And so I'm just an Adam McKay fan too. I mean, I love his transition. He was a head writer for Saturday Night Live, went on to write Anchorman, do all the Will Ferrell movies, and then with The Big Short, he kind of just switched over, won the Oscar best screenplay for that, and so now and he's got a Leonardo DiCaprio movie with Jennifer Lawrence, Leonardo DiCaprio coming to Netflix in December.
Mhm. So this is another one of those movies as well where Christian Bale is kind of known for really transforming for certain roles in past years. And if you're unaware of this, if you kind of look up what he looked like for the movie The Machinist, and then a year or two later, however much time it was, how big he got for the role of Batman in Batman Begins. And then this is another one of those transformations where if you look at the pictures, obviously to play Cheney, he definitely put on some weight, and it's crazy what that guy goes through, puts his body through for different roles.
Yeah, he did Batman. I believe the story is he went directly from Machinist to Batman. There wasn't even any time frame. He dropped down. I wish I could drop down weight like that. I think he said when he to do Cheney, he would put ice cream in the microwave and melt it so he could just drink it. That's how he put on the weight for Cheney.
So basically, he was ahead of the quarantine diet than everyone else. He started his quarantine diet early because I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing. It's just whatever they can grab and kind of make themselves look like it's month 10 of the pandemic. Let's just microwave some ice cream and just kind of put on some extra weight here since we can't really go back to normal life yet.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I think he said he's done with the weight transformations because he said he's getting too old to do those transfer. At a certain point, you're going to put on weight and just not be able to take it off. I hit that point in my 20s.
It's also just not great to take off that much weight and put it back on and keep doing that over and over again. It's got to put a toll on your body.
I can only imagine, yeah. But hopefully Christian Bale's here for a while because he's without a doubt, and he's a child actor too. I didn't even I he
Yep.
was in Newsies,
Yep.
you
That's
know,
right. Yeah.
which is
So
insane.
for this, you kind of said it earlier, but there isn't really a movie out there that's just about an inauguration because that would probably make a little bit of a boring movie anyway. But so I just kind of looked up some movie presidents and just kind of picked one of those and picked a movie around that. So the movie that I picked out for this one was Deep Impact. And, I would argue one of the best movie precedents out there with Morgan Freeman, not only because of the actor, but also his character, his specific president versus some of the others on film. And Deep Impact, this is not to be confused with Armageddon, the other giant meteor movie that came out around the same time. But I would say that Deep Impact is the better of the two. I feel like it has more dramatic weight to it. You feel more for the characters, and there's this feeling of like dread when you're watching the movie more versus Armageddon. And there's a great it has a great cast. You got a young Elijah Wood, obviously Morgan Freeman among others, and it's a real kind of great story that's being told, and the effects are still pretty good. With the um, spoilers, although this movie was made in the 90s, so but when they kind of stop the meteor and a chunk of it kind of still hits Earth. Yeah. Little twist there, but the effects are still like not half bad for the time period that it was made in, considering what they were trying to show with the scale of destruction going on.
Yeah, I love Deep Impact. I like Armageddon better, but I do love Deep Impact. I actually just watched those movies not too long ago, and during quarantine, I was in a end of the world movie marathon, so I watched Deep Impact in 2012 and
That'll put
all
you in good
those.
spirits watching those during quarantine.
Yeah, I like yeah. Deep Impact has more of a is more of a human story because I like that it's about a journalist. Taya Leone is a journalist who plays. She thinks she discovered a story of the president cheating on his wife because it's called ELE, Ellie,
Yep.
and it turns out ELE is code for is a abbreviation for extinction level event, and so she gets the story of the end of the world essentially, and um, it did. I mean, if you wanted to watch a movie that's semi like that just came out, Greenland. Greenland was really good, and it when I was watching it, it had that deep impact feel where it's not a balls out action movie like an Armageddon. It is more of a human story about this guy trying to get his wife and child to safety. And yeah, Deep Impact was. I mean, it had Elijah Wood, had Lily Sobieski, who I think doesn't act anymore. Robert Duvall's in it.
Yep.
Yeah,
He
it
kind of
had a
plays
solid
the
cast.
the captain of the shuttle that goes up to try and divert the meteor.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that might have been the first movie where because has he played a president more than once? Yeah, he has. He played the president with Gerard Butler and
Yeah. So
Angel Has Fallen.
Morgan Freeman plays the president in, I believe it's Angel Has Fallen, which I think is the
Angel.
third one of those Has Fallen movies with Gerard Butler. So he does Morgan Freeman. I mean, if there's anyone qualified to do it, it's him to play the president in multiple movies.
Yeah, and he plays God.
Yeah, it's true. Bruce Almighty
Yeah,
and Evan Almighty.
yeah, but I think most people forgot about that one.
Yeah.
I have. I think it
Yeah.
was pretty bad. Bruce Almighty's good though. Yeah, no, Morgan Freeman, man, he's in the pantheon, man. If there's a Mount Rushmore of actors, Morgan Freeman's on it.
Yeah, we got to protect him.
We do.
So obviously another big event that happened during this past week, and I think it just rang even louder than it did in years past because of everything going on in the world, was Martin Luther King Day on Monday, where a lot of people really, especially this year, I felt kind of paid attention to it and decided to celebrate it and to bring awareness to what he stood for and to, kind of honor his legacy, which, I thought was really great, of course. So for my movie that I picked out to go with this holiday, because we didn't really kind of pick out a story or an article about it, it was just more about the general holiday and the goings on of it. But when I was kind of flipping through channels on MLK Day when I was at home, obviously a lot of channels were playing movies and TV shows from either black creators or that featured black actors or both. And one of them that I kind of flipped past, I thought, oh wow, I haven't seen this in a while. It's a really great movie. Is Get Out, it was directed by Jordan Peele and just kind of shook up people and just really kind of hit the ground running with his directional debut when it came out a few years ago. And since it's still a relatively new movie, no spoiler talk for Get Out, but it's really one of those movies that you have to watch twice. There's just so many different meanings to different scenes and different symbolism and just twists and turns that happen the first time that you want to go back and say, oh, now that makes sense. And because it's still just a very well made, very well directed, well acted movie. And I wouldn't even really call it horror. It kind of classifies as horror, but I would almost say if you're kind of scared to watch horror movies, this really isn't like some of the other horror movies that you see out there these days. I would almost say this is more a thriller and a social commentary movie. So I really like Get Out. It had been a while since I've seen it, so I was glad to kind of tune into it and watch the rest of it when I caught it on TV the other day.
All right, so with Get Out, like you said, man, like yeah, it's a movie you have to watch twice to get, and so I will give a little bit of a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen Get Out, go away for 30 seconds. But essentially, the first time I saw Get Out, I didn't understand the ending because it seemed to me like the white people were putting their brains into the black people, and then they were becoming vegetables. Like, and I didn't understand the appeal of that. Why would the white people want to become vegetables? So I watched it and I had to talk to my friend about it. I was just like, this makes no sense to me. Why would they voluntarily become vegetables just to be in the younger person's body? And then he explained to me like, well, they're not actually vegetables. It's just for that weekend they're pretending to be subservient just to keep up the facade for the Daniel Kaluuya character. And then when I went back and watched it a second time, I was like, oh, right, okay, now it makes much more sense. And now it clicked. The social commentary of that movie clicked for me a lot better because I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense to me. So, yeah, Get Out was a good one.
So, are you looking forward, having seen Get Out, to more of Jordan Peele's projects that he might be working on? Because a lot of people, this upcoming Candyman reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people think it's being directed by Jordan Peele. It's actually being directed by, I believe her name is Nia DaCosta, but Jordan Peele is just a producer on that movie. So, but irregardless, does watching Get Out, does this make you excited for more of his projects that might be coming out in the future?
Well, I mean, it made me excited when Us came out, and I went to the theater and saw Us and absolutely loved it. I thought Us was phenomenal. It didn't get as much love as Get Out, which I can kind of see, but I thought Us was great, and I thought the soundtrack for Us was great. And in all honesty, if Lupita Nyong'o would have been nominated for the Oscar for that movie, I'd have been perfectly fine with that because her double performance in that is so freaking great.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the Academy doesn't really like horror movies that much because another kind of snub along that line happened a couple years ago when, oh my God, what was her name? Who was
Toni Collette?
Yeah, Toni Collette was in Hereditary, and she did a amazing job acting in that movie, and she wasn't nominated, and people were very upset by that. So the Academy, I don't think, just doesn't like or really respect horror movies that much, unfortunately.
Yeah, they with the exception of Get Out, which obviously took best screenplay. Before that, I think you'd have to go back to what Silence of the Lambs before you have respect for the genre. But there is a new wave ushered in by Get Out of more intelligent horror thriller type movies, like what was I don't even know, but I mean they still have the garbage ones. I just watched Fantasy Island, that new horror remake movie, which in all honesty I watched it because to self gloat a little bit. The director of that movie is named Jeff Wadlow, and he directed a movie called Never Back Down, which if you watch, you'll see this face pop up in it. I played a bouncer in it, and I played a referee for one of the underground fight matches in it. And the guy was awesome. I joked around with him one day. I was like, hey, I went up to him. I just said to him, I was like, hey man, if you need help directing this movie, just let me know. I'll take the reins for you. And he handed me, no joke, they have this like probably $200,000 piece of equipment that he uses to watch, the scenes from Video Village. And he just handed it to me and said, all right, here you go, dude. And I was just like, I froze. I was just like, he's like, you better give that back to me. I was like, eh. And so I just remember that. And I was just like, and so I'll champion that guy till the end, even though Fantasy Island was okay. It was okay. It was an hour and a half, horror movie type thing, but the director Jeff Wadlow is because of working with him on Never Back Down, I'll champion that guy. But the point of that is, I think Get Out ushered in a new level of respect for those types of movies, and I mean even your guy Robert Eggers, director of your all-time favorite movie, The Witch. I mean, even though I'm not a fan of that movie, you can't deny that it is a original movie that took chances, and Eggers continues that. His movies are unique.
Yeah, I'm really loving this era in horror that we're getting with some of these new directors to the scene. Where you mentioned Eggers, and he did The Witch in 2015, which that's my favorite horror movie ever. He just did The Lighthouse, if you know that one, with William Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, which I didn't quite like it as much, but I still thought it was good. It was a very unique and well-directed vision he had. And then he's got another one coming out called The Northman, which is like a Viking revenge movie. I don't know when it's going to come out. Coronavirus might have something to do with that. And then you get these other directors that are new to the kind of horror scene, like Ari Aster, who did Hereditary and Midsommar, both of which were very different, very entertaining horror movies. And then, of course, Jordan Peele, who obviously was involved with Get Out, Us, Candyman, which I think it looks like it's going to be good as well. It's just, I'm loving all these new directors on the scene for horror that are bringing these different, kind of visions that we haven't seen before to the table.
I mean, for MLK Day, I just was trying to think of movies that play on Black experience, black life and stuff. And so I guess when I was thinking about that, I kind of went back and thought about somebody who we just lost, Debo, if you will, Tiny Lister. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Friday.
Sure.
Because Friday is, the reason I like Friday, I think the reason Friday hit so hard, so hard was it came on the heels of you get Boys in the Hood. And Boys in the Hood, phenomenal movie directed by John Singleton, who sadly just passed away as well. First ever Black director nominated for Best Director. Youngest person ever nominated for Best Director as well, I believe. And but that movie came out, and it was like a hardcore drama about life in the hood. And then Friday comes out, and it's a hilarious but truthful look at life in the hood. And even though it was funny, I mean, one of the best scenes in that movie was when John Witherspoon, sadly another guy who just passed away. 2020 was a rough year, man. But so John Witherspoon, and it's when Ice Cube's in his room and he has his gun and he's going to go, confront Debo with the gun. And John Witherspoon says, you fight this, you fight with these, you live to fight another day. And so it's like this great comedy movie, and that scene alone was like encapsulated as a white guy growing up in suburbia. You have certain, you think of the hood in a different way than you would anybody who actually lives it. So yeah, I appreciate movies like that and like a Get Out, and these movies that show me a different life that I would never see just based on where I am, where I grew up. And I think Friday was such a great movie, and showing that the hood as it's perceived really isn't as bad as it may be looked at in white America. All right, so jump right into the next story, which was actually a pretty significant story in the NFL this week, which is Phillip Rivers deciding to call it a career after 17 years, playing 16 of those years with the Chargers, and what did he do? Only one with the Colts.
Yep.
And it's a shame that he never won a Super Bowl. He's going to. Well, I guess that's a question. You think he'll go down as a Dan Marino type, who was another quarterback who has legendary numbers but never won the Super Bowl?
I think so because, been in the league 17 years, even if he was an average quarterback, he would have piled up enough stats to make the Hall of Fame, which I think he will for sure. Because, to have the stats that he did, even if he didn't have a ring, that he's still, I think, going to, for sure, get into the Hall of Fame. First ballot or not, who knows? But, Phillip Rivers, he was always one of those. He's always been like a top 10 quarterback of the league in almost every year that he's played. And he's been playing almost as long as I've been watching football. Like, I started watching football when I was 10, 12 years old. And Phillip Rivers has just been a mainstay since then. And it's a shame he only spent the one last year with the Colts. I always like it, and you don't really see it as much these days, where a guy spends almost his entire career on a team and is just known for being an emissary of that organization. And, everyone is going to remember Phillip Rivers for his time with the Chargers, sure. But, in a situation like this where his last year was on the Colts, it's like when a guy plays 10, 15 years with an organization and then signs, 1 or 2 year deals with a couple other clubs at the end of their career for a lot less money. It's just kind of sad to see that they didn't just finish their careers out with their team that everyone knows them for. But Phillip Rivers still above average quarterback, for almost his entire time in the league.
Yeah, with that, I think about like Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice, my all-time favorite team is the 49ers, just being from the San Francisco area. And so Jerry Rice, he left the 49ers, went to the Oakland Raiders, went to the Denver Broncos, and even played, I think, a season for the stupid Seattle Seahawks, which just still. But then when he decided to call it a day, what happens is they signed him. The 49ers signed him to a one-day contract so that he can retire a 49er, which I'm sure will happen. I don't think they've announced that yet or anything, but I'm sure the Chargers will sign him to a one-day contract to get him back so he can retire a Charger.
Yeah, that's a fairly common maneuver that a lot of teams do these days, just as a way to kind of end things with the team that, athletes kind of started on and played a long portion of their career for. Like, more and more teams kind of do that these days, where they sign them to the one-day contract and they retire with their original team, their home team, so hopefully they do that.
Yeah, not everybody can be, was it Ray Lewis freaking goes out on a Super Bowl against the 49ers still. It was holding in the end zone. It should have been first and goal. Kaepernick hands the ball off to Frank Gore. 49ers win the Super Bowl. But I'm not jaded by that or anything. So with that article, I just picked my favorite football movie, which is Any Given Sunday. I absolutely love Any Given Sunday. Al Pacino is the coach. You You got Jamie Foxx, and this was Jamie Foxx before Jamie Foxx was Jamie Foxx. This was Jamie Foxx, comedy star, booty call Jamie Foxx, when he got to work in this movie. And it's just, I mean, it's a long movie, it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes, but it's just a gritty movie, a gritty football movie that I believe Oliver Stone said he wanted to use NFL teams, but when the NFL saw the script and saw like the behind the scenes activity they were going to show, the drug use, the prostitutes, the NFL said, "No, you're not using our teams." That's why they're called the Miami Sharks in the movie. So,
Yeah,
you ever seen it?
it's always I haven't actually, but I was gonna say it's always tough to get the rights to use teams in movies, and that's why you see so few with the real life teams in them. So when you do, hopefully you can appreciate it a little bit more, and it really gives that extra feel of taking place in our world in real life. But yeah, it's a shame that they couldn't get the rights to use team names and logos and such in this one. And I haven't seen it. This is one of the few sports movies that I kind of haven't seen that I want to, because there are sports movies out there that have come out that I don't really want to see them, that they're not high on the list. But this is one where, it is on my list and I do want to see this someday.
Air Bud? Have you seen Air Bud?
I have actually, when I was, not since I was a kid, but I did see that one, sure.
Well, I definitely recommend giving Any Given Sunday a watch. I mean, the music in it's great too. He uses really good music in that movie. It's I appreciate all sorts of football movies, and perhaps one of them will be your movie. So why don't you tell me what your movie is, and we'll see if it's on my list.
No, my movie is completely random for this story because, there's only so many football movies out there, and we're going to continue.
Wait, can I guess? Is your movie A River Runs Through It?
No. So there's only so many football movies out there, and football will continue to go on as we do this show, and I didn't want to kind of use up all of them super quickly. So a lot of people have been kind of making jokes about Philip Rivers, about how his family is so big, how he has, I believe it's 7 kids, and with possibly more on the way. So I kind of took that concept and ran with it about large family movies. So with that, I picked The Sound of Music. And this is one where I just saw this movie for the first time during quarantine back, it feels like a million years ago, but back last summer, last spring. And it's a really long one. I think it's almost 3 hours long, something like that. But it still kind of holds up. I like watching it for the first time. A lot of the soundtrack in that, which is really great. A lot of these songs I listened to, and I thought, oh, that's where that comes from. All these songs that you've kind of heard over the years that if you weren't sure where they came from, The Sound of Music might be the answer. And the reason I compared it to this story is because the main family, the Von Trapp family in the movie, is made up of, I think it's 9 kids, either 8 or 9 kids. So a big family, there too. And this was one where, again, I didn't know too much about it. I knew it was a musical and I knew it was set in Europe, but I really didn't know much else besides that. So, when Nazi Germany kind of slides into the picture at some point during the movie, I thought, oh, that's what we're, kind of deal with for part of the movie here.
Yeah, I'm not going to be good on this one. I've never seen The Sound of Music. I know little things about it. Like I know Christopher Lee hated making it so much. Apart from that, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I've never seen it. I'm sure it's great, but it's like you said, it's a 3-hour movie, and if I'm gonna watch a 3-hour movie, I gotta be in the mood for a 3-hour movie. And if I'm in the mood for a 3-hour movie, I might throw on like a Tarantino or The Irishman or something.
And it's funny you say that because I just thought like I have to be in the same kind of mood to watch a very long movie like that. I don't have a problem with it. I don't mind if it tells a good story. I don't care if a movie's 3 hours or 5 hours. I'm in if it's done well. But that's the reason why I still haven't seen The Irishman, is because I need to carve out a 3-hour window to kind of sit down and watch that all the way through, because I don't like starting and stopping movies when I watch them. I want to watch them all the way through in one sitting. So But
Yeah.
I do recommend The Sound of Music. It's still, I think it still kind of holds up. It's this good. It's not just a musical; it's also a movie, if that makes sense. But it features a young Julie Andrews in the lead and a young Christopher Plummer who plays the dad of the
Chris
family.
Plummer, that's what I meant. I said
Yeah.
Christopher Lee. I meant Christopher Plummer. Yeah.
But no, I would still recommend it. I believe it should still be on Disney Plus right now, which is where I saw it. So for our next story here, we picked out one where if you didn't really see it in the news, it's not as big of a story as some other stuff that was going on this week. But someone that everyone knows and loves just turned 99 this week, and that's Betty White. And I really hope she'll be around for at least a few more years because she's just a national treasure. And God bless her that she's lived this long and is still enjoying life, because there in the headline she jokes about being able to stay up late for her 99th birthday, even though not that much is going on this year, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I love Betty White. I uh, I like that she became the dirty grandma in her later years, which will play into my movie pick. But Betty White is just she's one of those people, man. That you're just like, I'm happy she's still around, like a Mel Brooks, harkening back to the old days of show business.
So the movie I picked for this one, instead of kind of featuring one that she was in, because I looked up her IMDb, and she's actually more of a big TV star than a big movie star. She's been in a fair amount of movies, but when I was trying to pick one, there wasn't really a great big one that everybody knows and everybody loves to talk about that I could find. So instead, I kind of took the concept where she's 99. Age is just a number to her, and instead talk about a movie that I just saw a little bit ago for the first time, which is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So, age is just a number, and that's especially true with this one because it's the movie, everyone kind of knows it, where Brad Pitt kind of ages backwards. And, it's directed by David Fincher, who he's a director I really love. He did Seven and Zodiac
Fight
and
Club.
Fight Club and a lot of other great movies. Gone Girl, I really love, that movie that he directed. And Curious Case of Benjamin Button, I just watched this one for the first time, I think a couple months ago. And, this is another kind of long movie, but that's because it tells such a long, like, great story about the life of Brad Pitt and what it's like to kind of age backwards as he does in the movie. And, it's very well directed, and it takes place kind of in a different era. So it already has this kind of unique look and feel to it. And, Kate Blanchett, who kind of acts opposite him as, his on again, off again lover, excuse me, is just, really great as well. And, this is a little bit earlier in her career with Taraji P. Henson was in it as well. And she does a really great job with her part too. And I was really surprised because when this movie was made, she wasn't quite on the scene as much as she is today. But she did a really great job as well, Taraji P. Henson. And I think the more I kind of see her and the more I appreciate her as an actress, because her in Hidden Figures was really great too. So Curious Case of Benjamin Button, really good movie.
Curious Case, it is a good movie, and I think it speaks to how much I like David Fincher. That I will say, with the exception of Alien 3, which he is the director of, but really isn't. Um, it's my least favorite Fincher movie, but that is to say, I still love it. But when you think about the list you already said of his other movies, it's I haven't seen it nearly as many times as I've seen, The Game, Fight Club, all those movies. So it is a phenomenal movie. And honestly, Fincher could potentially be the best director winner this year. There's talk of him potentially getting it from Mank, which I thought was a very good movie. I'm not sure if you saw that one yet, but yeah,
No,
but Brad Pitt's one of my all-time favorite actors. I just think that guy, go back to 12 Monkeys. I mean, that guy just is one of the best actors and has the best pair of abs you've ever seen. But aside from that, And in all honesty, when I was this might be why I never got dates in middle school. Uh, I would I would go up to people and I'd say, "Hey," this was like fifth grade, sixth grade. I'd go up to people and girls, guys, whoever. And I'd say, "Hey, you guys, did you want to meet Brad Pitt?" And they'd be like, "Oh my God, yeah." And I'd be like, "There he is. There's Brad Pitt." And so I'm hilarious. And as you can tell, I remained single. I should bring back that joke. It's a great joke. You don't think I should bring that into the press box?
As long as Brad Pitt stays as an actor, that joke is clearly still relevant.
And I mean, dude just won an Oscar. Now it could be, do you want to meet Academy Award winner Brad Pitt? Here he is. Oh man, is it possible I'm not as funny as I think I am? That's a Seinfeld reference, sir. You should get that.
I did, just
Okay.
I was still busy rolling my eyes at the joke and the inflated ego.
But yeah, Fincher in my pantheon of best directors, Fincher is on that Mount Rushmore. Christopher Nolan, Fincher, Tarantino, Scorsese, Spielberg. So
I don't know all those directors that you just listed. I mean, they're okay. They're not bad. Like,
no, I'm more of a Uwe Boll kind of man. If you get that reference.
No.
All right, Uwe Boll was a guy in the early 2000s who made like Alone in the Dark and horrible video game adaptations that many people consider to be like the worst movies ever made.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So with this one, my movie pick is a movie she's in, and I picked it because before this movie, Betty White was known as the sweet golden girl, the TV personality, whatever that word is. But she was known for TV. She was the sweet woman of TV. And then this movie was released, and she has a single line in this movie that is responsible for the transformation of Betty White's career. And that is the movie Lake Placid, which is a movie written by David E. Kelly, who's phenomenally. He's wrote recently the Hugh Grant, Nicole Kidman series on HBO, and he's got Big Sky on TV right now. He's just a great writer, and so he wrote this movie about a giant alligator who's killing things in Lake Placid, and so halfway in the movie or whatever, you see Betty White. Betty White comes out, and you see that she's feeding a giant cow to this giant alligator. And so the people go and question her about this. And so one of the detectives in the movie is played by the great Brendan Gleeson. And so Betty White's husband went missing previously. And so Brendan Gleeson kind of not so coyly accuses her of feeding her husband to the alligator. And Betty White just looks at him and says, "If I had a this is where I tell you to it." And I believe that single line changed how the world saw Betty White, because before that, she was the sweet golden girl, aging gracefully. And that line changed her into like this funny adult, the dirty granny almost. And you could see her career since then has been kind of more edgy almost, if you will. And I went back and watched that clip and I cracked up from it again. It's just because of where it's placed, it was so unexpected for Betty White to say that line. And I believe that line is why Betty White is so beloved today. She would still be beloved because she's Betty White. But that line was like, oh, Betty White got a little naughty in her. All right, so for my last story of this week's episode, I just typed into Google. I wanted to see weird stories that you may have missed, instead of covering the top headlines. And so there was a story from December 22nd about a Santa Claus who skydived and wound up in power lines. He wasn't hurt. He was fine. Everything was fine. but it just was one of those funny stories that you see, at the end of a news broadcast. And you know, what'd you think? I don't know how to transition that one.
No, this is definitely one of those wacky stories that you just find at random places on the internet. So, it may be from December 22nd, but, it makes it kind of even funnier, I guess, reading about it now, mid-January instead of, back then.
Yeah, but the reason I picked this one is because the second I saw the picture of the Santa Claus in the power lines, I had one scene from one movie pass through my brain, and it's another Brad Pitt role, and that is Deadpool 2. Because
Mm.
if you remember, in Deadpool 2, Brad Pitt has a two-frame cameo where he plays the Invisible Man who dies when he gets caught in power lines. And so that was when I saw that headline. That was the only thing. That was the image that went through my head was Brad Pitt's. Literally, I think it was just two frames. Boom, boom, 2 frames of Brad Pitt just electrocuted in the frames. And so that's why I picked that story.
So let's also pretend that you picked it for the also relevant reason because last week, when Kevin Feige was doing press for WandaVision and some of the other upcoming MCU Marvel projects, he also kind of talked about Deadpool 3, which is coming out sometime in the near future here with Ryan Reynolds, how it's going to be a part of the MCU and it's going to still remain R-rated because, that was the best way to let that character kind of flourish and do his thing. So, let's just pretend that you picked it for that relevant reason too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were worried that they were going to go with a watered down Deadpool win the MCU. So it is nice that they came out flat out and said, no, we're going to keep it R. Don't you worry.
And I think that's a good thing because some of these other characters that they have yet to make movies about, it's going to be really hard to do them in a PG-13 rating and still have it be a good movie and true to the character. And an example I'm going to use for that is Blade. And I can't wait for this new Blade to come out because I think Mahershala Ali is an amazing actor and I think he's going to do a great job as it. But because I think of Deadpool's success, I'm even more excited because I hope that they're going to keep that one R-rated because, come on, it's a movie about a guy using weapons to hunt vampires. I mean, if you try to make it PG-13, it's not gonna work.
True, true. I mean, I only know Blade from the movies. I never saw. I'm not a comic book reader. I think we covered that before. But yeah, Blade should be R-rated. Mahershala Ali, that guy can pretty much do any role you throw at him. The guy's phenomenal. I just hope when it comes to Blade that they give Wesley Snipes some background, some secondary character in that movie. Wesley Snipes has to be a part of that movie.
That's what a lot of people say, and I get that. I get that, he was the one who brought Blade to the big screen, and he kind of, paved the way for other superhero movies after that. But, you know, at a certain point, like, we kind of have to move on. I mean, there's rumors swirling around that the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man are going to be in, Spider-Man 3 with Tom Holland. But, when people reboot or remake, a series or something or a movie, it's like, look, it'd be great if we had a little cameo from somebody from the past iteration, but if we keep dwelling on the past, then we're not going to be able to kind of make new material and work with new actors and new technology that's come out since an original's been made. It's just it would be a nice little nod if they had Wesley Snipes pop up for like 5 seconds in this new Blade. But, at a certain point, I feel like we just have to move forward if we're going to do a remake.
Well, to be clear, I'm not saying I want Wesley Snipes in the movie as a Blade or as Blade. I want Wesley Snipes to play Whistler or whatever the other. I just want him to be an actor in the movie, not as Blade or not even a continuation of the previous Blade series. I just like Wesley Snipes. Just want to see him in a big ass MCU movie. And to the other point with the other movies, I kind of like the fact that Spider-Man 3. I don't, it's not going to be big roles, but I like the idea that Tobey Maguire is going to come back to be part of it. Andrew Garfield. Same with what's it, The Flash? I think The Flash is bringing in Michael Keaton, bringing him back as Batman. That to me is, I cannot wait to see Michael Keaton back as Batman.
Right, and those kind of parts tie into the story of these movies coming out. But people, and there are, believe me, there are people out there saying that I'm not going to watch Blade unless they do another one with Wesley Snipes, and those people I think are a little stuck in the past. And but I still understand it a little bit because that's all they know so far. They haven't seen these new visions for this new iteration of Blade, still sticking with this example, or this new Spider-Man kind of meeting up with the older ones. They only like what they know so far. So hopefully when these new kind of iterations come out, you'll like them kind of doing different things with these same characters.
Yeah, it's also the internet. Somebody on the internet saying, "I'm never going to share." They're the first ones in line, really, when the movie comes out. And like I said, man, Mahershala Ali, but even before he took off in Moonlight and Green Book, um, I don't know if you watch House of Cards, but he was phenomenal in House of Cards. So he's just a great actor. And there's very few people I think could continue Blade and have me excited about it. And Mahershala Ali is one of the only I can think of off the top of my head right now who I'm like, yeah, that he can be Blade. He can take over for Wesley Snipes. So
So for this story, obviously it kind of took place before Christmas, and it's kind of about Christmas and Santa and everything. But here we are in mid-January, and I'm done with Christmas. We've moved past. We're in the new year, So I didn't pick a Christmas movie for this one, but the guy was using a powered parachute or something like that. He was skydiving, so I took that and ran with it. So the movie I picked with that in mind is Godzilla, and I'm talking about the 2014 Godzilla. And I think it was appropriate to pick this one because you kind of talked about the 98 version of Godzilla in last week's episode. And this one, there's, and I say skydiving because there's a scene in it where about two-thirds of the way through the movie, something like that, three-quarters, they halo jump into the city of San Francisco, your city, to kind of deal with Godzilla and the giant monsters that he's fighting. So, um, Godzilla, I really liked this one when it came out, and I still do, and it almost kind of makes me a little sad the direction that they went in with King of the Monsters, and I have yet, obviously, no one has seen Godzilla versus Kong yet, so we can't really talk about that one, but it kind of makes me sad because the 2014 version of Godzilla just started off for me. It was just so great the way that they did it because it really felt like, what if this gigantic, lizard monster just pops up in today's world? And it really made you feel like this was a real disaster, and it was just so well done, kind of like tastefully done. And, the score and the setting and, the human parts of the movie maybe weren't as good, but we still kind of have to base it around some humans to kind of tell a little bit of a story. So the human parts weren't as good for me, but the rest of the movie was just so great with the way that they depicted Godzilla and just how they handled the movie.
yeah, I liked the first Godzilla, the 2014 Godzilla. I thought it was really good. I mean, it had Bryan Cranston in it, and that was the whole beginning of the movie type stuff. And Elizabeth Olsen, who that's one of those actresses I just love. And so it's a good one. And you're right, King of the Monsters. I only ever saw it once in theaters in 3D, and it didn't leave a mark on me, which is a shame because the director is Michael Daughtry. I can't. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but he's the guy who did Trick or Treat. He did Krampus. You ever see Krampus for Christmas? So he is a phenomenal director and he makes great original movies. And King of the Monsters just didn't didn't hit for me. Maybe I need to watch it again. Like I said, I only saw it once. Sometimes you watch a movie once and you're like, that sucks. Then you watch it again with your expectations down here, and you're like, not as bad as I thought. So I'll give it a watch. And yeah, Godzilla versus Kong, what they just announced, it's going to be out in March on HBO Max. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Something like that. But again, these release dates for movies in 2021, they're fluid. You can't count any of them, even the ones that are going to kind of debut on HBO Max. You or ones like that, Disney Plus, all these other platforms. You really can't count on that because they're just. I'm sure as we're discussing this right now, more movies just shifted their release dates or something. It's just,
Sure,
it's
yeah.
still such a fluid schedule for movies for 2021.
Yeah, it's true. What was it yesterday? Sony just pushed back like their entire catalog a year, pretty much. Morbius, which was supposed to be out last summer, is now coming out next year. So, yeah, it's we'll be back to normal at some point in this world. I hope. I think.
So another sports story that kind of came out during this week was the New York Mets firing their brand new GM, Jared Porter, for sexual harassment against a female reporter. And, I do give props to the Mets for taking such swift action because a story was published about him on ESPN one night this week. And then the next morning, it was announced that they had fired their GM, this guy, Jared Porter. So, good on them for taking swift and decisive action and saying that we have a zero tolerance policy with this sort of thing. And, thankfully in this circumstance, it was carried out. If you read this story, it wasn't really carried out the first time something like this happened with this guy and this reporter, unfortunately. But at least action has been taken now and it has been dealt with. So to quickly sum up the story, this guy who had worked his way through the ranks of baseball organizations up to the role of general manager with the New York Mets until recently, at some point he came across this female reporter and they had exchanged numbers, and she was a foreign reporter. She wasn't really used to the customs of the country, so she didn't really kind of interpret or see the meaning behind some of his actions. Some other people may have, but they had exchanged numbers, and then from there he just kind of endlessly texted her and sent her inappropriate photos and just all unanswered at one point. It was 60 something messages that she had not answered that he just kept sending her. And like I said, unfortunately at the time she was working with the Cubs and brought it up to someone there within the organization, and they didn't really kind of deal with it appropriately. But thankfully now it has been dealt with, and it's a shame that things like this still happen in the workplace in sports.
Yeah, I don't know. I watch a lot of ESPN, and honestly, some of my favorite reporters on ESPN are Katie Nolan, Mina Kimes, Sarah Spain, and they're reporters who I very much respect their opinions. When they talk, they give better opinions than the men do half the time, most of the time, really. Especially Mina Kimes. I don't know if you read her stuff. I think Mina Kimes was the one who broke the story about this guy. And but the point I'm making is they do talk a lot about the stuff they have to deal with as female reporters. And you can't. I can't imagine. I'm a dude. I'm a white dude. I don't have to deal with too much harassment. I'm a fat guy. I get my harassment that way. But when it comes to that type of stuff, so I can't begin to imagine what they have to deal with. And for this reporter, you do feel for her because it becomes almost a fight or flight, I bet, in her mind of, do I report this and potentially lose my entire career or not? And so she did. And luckily, we are now in a time where reporting behavior like that is taken more seriously. When you report behavior like that, it's not just, I guess you can't even really say that, though, because they did sweep it under the rug kind of to start with. It got a little bit more serious. It's like you have to report it. A woman has to report twice what a man has to report once in order to be taken seriously, almost. So, yeah, you hope in the world of sports, in the world of entertainment, and just in the world in general, that people are going to start being better about it. Maybe just men are going to be more scared about being called out for doing stuff like that. It's going to go down. Maybe.
Well, hopefully they're scared not to do something like this in the first place. So, let's start with that and say, like, not even get caught, or afraid to
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. So
that's what I'm saying is I'm hoping that people are going to be like, I don't want the embarrassment of this story coming out. I'm not going to send 62 unanswered texts. 62. Have you ever texted a girl and had her not text you back? You stop after one, maybe two. 62 is like, you're pathetic, dude.
Yeah. And it's such a shame, too, because when I was looking up a corresponding movie to this story, honestly, there aren't a lot of movies made about this kind of scenario, about sexual harassment and what it means to women. They're just really, there aren't too many out there, not as many as you would think. It's not like it's a subject that a movie hasn't been made about at all, but not as quite as many as you would think, especially in today's day and age where we want to bring more awareness to the issue. And I'll just get right into my movie pick. A movie that I could have said about this type of thing is Bombshell, that came out recently. And I hadn't actually seen that one yet. And, it's kind of on my docket. So I think that would have been a good one to talk about with this. But, a movie that, while it's not necessarily the same thing, but I still want to talk about with something like this, is American History X. And for people who have seen the movie, they know there's a scene in it where there's a pretty graphic depiction of sexual assault, sexual harassment. But, and that obviously plays a big part in the movie, but, it's about so much more than that. And I think the rest of the movie, its themes and what it's trying to say about race and everything that kind of goes along with it, is still, all those conversations are still being discussed today as well. So it deals with a lot of heavy subjects, and it was made in the early 2000s, but it still has a place in today's society.
It's American History X. It's one of those I haven't seen in a long time. It's a great movie, and I remember it's a tough one to watch. I remember it's a movie that the director actually wanted to take his name off of, because the movie he made, apparently Edward Norton was a little, back then a little overzealous, and he took control of the movie and edited it to where he wanted it, which, in all honesty, because the movie is so good, you wonder, is the director's cut, would that be as good as the movie that is out there right now? And it's a tough movie to watch because the ending is, spoiler alert, it came out, 97, so I'm going to go ahead and hit you with some of that. But the ending is, it's one of the saddest endings that I think I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, this guy is working to change over his life. He's working to help his brother who followed down his footsteps, and the end comes, and it's one of the most. When was the last time? Have you seen that movie in a while?
Probably fairly recently at some point. Not in the last year or so, but I do kind of own it, and I do watch it on occasion.
You when it comes to a mind of hate like that, you can, and a lot of that happened recently, in the past couple of years with the rise of white supremacy. A lot of news stories would go talk to people who were former KKK members and stuff, and they would talk about how they changed their lifestyle from this world of hate to where they are now, trying to talk to current KKK members and Proud Boys of how destructive those viewpoints are. And when you were talking about the sexual assault in that movie, I had to think about what you were talking about, but I do remember what you're talking about. And that'll do it. I mean, that'll change your perspective It's a good movie. I should watch that one again. So this is one where it's a serious story, but I had to ABC it. And ABC it's an improv technique where somebody says a word and you go from A to B to C to get to something that is different. You just in your brain you go to a different space to get to it. So with this one, I was just thinking about the guy sent this woman a nude photo of himself. And so that made my brain think about other prominent figures who sent nude photos of themselves that got out in the public. And so I started thinking about the quality Brett Favre. He had a whole scandal where he had sent nude pictures to people. And because of Brett Favre, I had to go with the classic There's Something About Mary. Because Brett Favre is in that movie, and one of the funniest scenes in that movie where he comes in at the end and he's like, well, Brett Favre's in town, and he just looks at Ben Stiller. He's like, we're playing the 49ers, you dumbass. It's funny. I don't know, but that was my ABC for this one. Was just a story about a guy who sends inappropriate pictures. Brett Favre did it. Brett Favre's in There's Something About Mary. There's Something About Mary is one of the funniest movies I think ever made. I just watched that one recently too. So
yeah, it's definitely a classic comedy, and it's kind of early in Ben Stiller's career, like still at the early part. It's not one of the first ones he's made, but he's still so great in that. And Cameron Diaz, she's not in that many movies anymore, but this is like, I would argue that this is probably her most well-known movie that she's been in. Some people might say The Mask or, a couple other ones, but obviously There's Something About Mary is just a super great comedy. I think it's still funny, and it just, there's a couple scenes in there that are just, classics, and I think it's still like a really great comedy to just watch, and one of those ones where, because it came out a while ago, you probably haven't seen it in a while. It's not like it really gets a lot of airtime on TV where, channels want to show newer movies to get people to tune in. But this is one of those ones where occasionally you'll see it on TV and, hopefully tune in and just, it'll kind of take you back a little bit and just, it'll make you remember how much you kind of liked a movie like this.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was 98. Directed by Peter and Bobby Farrelly, and Peter Farrelly obviously went on to direct the aforementioned Mahershala Ali in Green Book. And when he won those Oscars, dude, I was flipping out because he did Dumb and Dumber. There's Something About Mary, Kingpin. I was so happy to see him freaking win out. Who would have thought the director of Dumb and Dumber and There's Something About Mary would go on to win, best screenplay and best picture?
Well, it's like you were saying earlier with Adam McKay. If somebody would have told you, that he would be Oscar nominated or win an Oscar, when he directed things like Step Brothers and, a couple other Will Ferrell movies, who would have thought that?
Yeah. Oscars coming up this year. I wonder who's going to win those. But yeah, There's Something About Mary. Just every few years, that's one I'll pull out and watch because it's just a funny movie, man. All right, so at the end, so now we've wrapped up all of our stories for the week. Hopefully they were entertaining, and hopefully if you listen to this, maybe it's helping you be like, oh, you're right, I haven't seen American History X in a few years. Go back and watch some of these movies we talk about. But to wrap it up, what we're going to do is we try and pick a movie that we watched in the previous week that is, new to us. And so this week we just happened to pick one that is new to the whole world, really, and one that we both watched recently, and that's the Disney Pixar movie Soul. So I'll kick it off with, I think it's one of the best Pixar movies ever made. I genuinely loved it. How about you?
I know. I remember when we were deciding what movie we wanted to talk about at the end of the episode this week, and you kind of were talking about it a little bit. We were texting back and forth, and obviously we didn't really talk about it at length because that's what we do here. But, you really seemed to really enjoy it. So I just watched it earlier this week, in preparation for this, but also because, I had wanted to check it out. And I think you're right. I'm not sure if I would call it the best Pixar movie, like one of their best, because I don't think it's been enough time for it to really kind of sink in and to me think about comparing it to some of the other ones that they've done. But I would say that it is one of their best ones that they've done in recent years. And that's what a lot of people seem to say, reviewers, that this is kind of like getting back to their roots of what they used to be, where they just take this original concept and new characters and a new setting and just make a really great, emotional, heartfelt movie. And I think this is definitely that. It's not another sequel or another, kind of so-so effort by them. It's just, Pixar really made a good one when they made Soul, and it was just, it has a lot of emotion to it, and you maybe not understand what's going on at certain times, but it will still make you feel things, even though you might kind of not get the concept of what's going on because it deals with a lot of heavy, big concepts. But I think it still gets that emotion across for sure.
Yeah, man. So yeah, Soul was released, what was it, Christmas Day, and I watched it Christmas night, and then I actually just watched it again a few hours ago in preparation for this, just to refresh my memory on it. And I mean, I'm gonna have to say, I'm sticking with it. It's one of the best Pixar movies ever in my top five. If I were to say the Toy Story movies count as one movie, then my top five would be, the Toy Story movies, Wall-E, and this one might hit third for me because that it's just so good, dude. It's just, think about it, it's a kids movie about death that really deals with death. Um, and the reason I think it hit for me too is I am a person who is working very hard to achieve my dream in this world, which is to work in the movies and stuff. And I'm 36 right now, and it hasn't happened for me fully yet. I do what I can, but I'm not at the level of success that I want. And that's all this character in this movie is he is the guy who wants to be a jazz musician more than anything, and his life led him down a different path where he's a teacher, and it hasn't happened for him yet. And so you take that type of theme with a person like me, and probably a lot of people in this world. I have a lot of friends out in LA who are still grinding every day to get their dreams going, and it takes a long time. And I'm sure same thing. It's you're working your ass off to get to that level of success that you want, that your dreams are. That's where I think Pixar is at its best, in that a kid will watch this movie and be like, haha, he fell down. An adult will watch it and be like, holy crap, that is deep. And that's why I genuinely love this movie so very much. And I think I just like jazz music, man. La La Land's one of my all-time favorite movies. I think jazz music's just, I'm starting to get a feel for it. I'm starting to enjoy it.
Yeah, movies about jazz music are surging here, in recent years. Maybe in a couple years we'll get another great movie that is really secretly a movie about jazz music.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so what would you say? We won't go through the full list because that'd be too long, but there's been 22, 23 Pixar movies. There's only been one that came out that I just didn't like, and that was Brave. I didn't really like Brave, but if you had to give your top three Pixar movies, if you can, what do you think they would be?
Well, to be fair, I think it kind of begins and ends with Toy Story because, those were one of the first Toy Story was one of the first movies that Pixar made as a studio because their signature kind of look for 3D animation that they have now, that's where it kind of started, and that's where the technology kind of first came out to be able to do something like that. And not only are and when I say the Toy Story movies, I don't count the fourth one that just came out because if you watch the first three Toy Stories, Toy Story 1 through 3, the story that is told over the course of them and the way that the third one ends, it's a great send off. It's a perfect ending. It's riding off into the sunset. and then they come along with the fourth one, which I'm sure is fine. I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's emotional, but for me, the fourth Toy Story was just this kind of the usual thing Hollywood does, where they see the success of a movie and they just beat it into the ground with sequels and unnecessary efforts. That it's like, look, I wish you would have just let it stay as is, and it would have been held in higher regard instead of ruined by the sequels that came after. So, I would say it just begins and ends with Toy Story, because those are, not only are they well made and emotional and well animated, it's just, I think they're just a great different idea for a movie where you're basically looking through the perspective of toys. It's just, I can't really say that there's a lot of movies out there like that. So it's original, and it's just, they're all really good from top to bottom, the first three.
But so Toy Stories 1 through 3, that's why I said I kind of lumped them as one movie, because they are one full story. And I will say 4 I enjoyed, and it does close out the series pretty good. But apart from that, WALL-E would be my second favorite. I just consider WALL-E to be the most romantic movie ever made. I mean, that movie is solely about how WALL-E loves Evie so much that he follows her across the galaxy. It's just, for me, it's one of the most romantic movies ever made. And so, yeah, I mean, Soul, to kind of button it down, put an end on the episode, I will say, I won't go into spoilers on this, but I will say the ending, there was a tag that I wanted to see in the end that didn't happen. So that is the only criticism I have of the ending of Soul, which is one small thing I wanted to happen didn't happen. And I think I'm giving enough of a hint that most people who watched it may be like, I think I know exactly what he's talking about. That just at the very end of the movie, one thing I wanted to happen didn't happen. All right, so that wraps up this week's episode. If you want to go ahead and check it out, well, you are checking us out on YouTube, but go ahead and hit the subscribe, because each week we're going to come out with new episodes where we discuss new news stories and new movies. And like I said, hopefully this episode we pick some movies that cover a couple decades. So maybe there's a couple movies in there that you like, I should check that out. If you want to check out the audio only version, for your ride to work, we're on Spotify, should be on iTunes coming up soon, but we're on several different streaming platforms. So go ahead and check that out. And we will be back next week with a brand new episode of Life Imitates Movies. So I'm Brad. That's Mitch. Signing off. Later.